What's up, guys and gals? Today we have a Shimano Sahara 3000FD that doesn't have a bail trip. Right, so we flip it. Let's do it back over here. Doesn't do anything. Sounds crazy and noisy. We know why that is, because the trip strike is not there. I don't know why, but it's not there. So we'll replace that. But along the way, we're going to show you how to break this down and service it also, because I haven't done one of these. So we'll start with the drag on the spool, just backing it off like this. And to open it up, we're going to pop off that clip inside there, sticking our screwdriver inside, pushing in and up, keeping your finger over it, then pulling these out. So as you can see, to clean this, I'm going to use a Q-tip, just get a lot of the debris off of it. But I'll also be using a toothbrush, and this kind of goes the same for most of the reel, to clean out any gaps or whatever in there. You especially want to pay attention to inside those little grooves right there, because the felt kind of wears off and finds its way inside there. So you want to clean that out too. On the bottom side, I'm not going to do much, even though you can remove that clicker. I'm going to leave it in place. But we can see there's some debris in there as well. I'm going to use a Q-tip, kind of clean that stuff out. Let's check the drag washers, make sure they're fine. And in general, they look okay. So I'll get this stuff cleaned up, come back to you guys, show you how to put this stuff back together. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is add some oil to the bottom for the clicker. Just some right in there. Just like that. Then work that in. You can add some grease to right here. The oil I'm using is Relax oil. And the grease I would be using would be Pen Real Grease. You can put some right there on top of that silver piece. Just helps protect it from getting corroded or something. And then for the drag washers, I'm just going to drop one in. They all seem fine to me. But we're going to use a little heavier of an oil, which is Abu Garcia. I'm going to put a couple drops on there, maybe 3 drops. First we'll go on is one of those keyed washers, has that little square or rectangle in the middle. Another drag washer. And then we're going to put in our aired washer, has those 2 little tabs on the side of it. They're going to go inside those slots that you see there inside the spool. Then the last drag washer. And then the last keyed washer. To get this retaining clip back in, we're going to stick it in at an angle, find the slot it should be in, hold it like that, then work your finger around as you push it down. When you get inside, you want to pull this up or down as need be to make sure it's in the slot that it should be in, which this one is now. Now we're going to get inside the body of the reel. We're going to open this up by loosening this right here. And notice I'm using metal on plastic here, but I'm going very gentle with it. So just be careful of using that to open it up. Unscrew this all the way. Out comes the screw, but there's also a little bushing there. So let's take that out together. Now this just pulls out. We can pull this up like so. There's a few pieces, just take note what came off of where. And then we have a screw here to remove to get to the nut that removes the rotor. This nut is, I don't remember. It's clockwise to remove it, so you're turning to the right to get it off. Sprocket, pull it up, make sure there's nothing under there. And now we're going to work on the rotor. I'm going to brush a lot of this stuff off, but we're also going to open this up so I can show you what's inside there. Under these 2 screws on each side, you're going to have a washer, or should have a washer that protects it. There it is right there. And it should be the same for the other side. Gently lift this up to release the tension that's on the spring there, then pull it out. You're going to have a clip, or a click pin and a click spring that's inside there. Let's take those out now so we don't lose it. The other side is the same deal like I said before. As a matter of fact, I take that back. There's no washer on this side, just on the bail arm side. I'm not removing that, but if you wanted to, because it's just a facade, but if you wanted to, there's a screw there and a screw at the bottom to remove it. I am going to remove this side, as this has the bail spring under it. Now that these two screws here are not the same, so the longer one will be going over here under the bail arm, and the shorter one will be going over here. I can pull this out, looks like that. I can pull this little plastic piece out here. It's like, just think of it like a little cup sort of thing. And then you have the trip arm, which is that. For the line roller, you're gonna have a few pieces. You have the screw, obviously, the bail arm, a washer with a little insert right there. That line roller has a thicker, what it looks like to be a thicker side, which will be over here. That'll be facing on, looking like that. The thinner side is facing towards the bail arm. So let's do it this way so you guys kind of see it. Then you just pull this off. Sometimes it comes off, sometimes it does not. If it doesn't, you can take a small screwdriver and just kind of gently pry it up. But this one came out. Pull out the bearing, and that's basically how it looks. Same deal as getting this cleaned up. I am going to use, the same sort of thing, nothing else new. I'll come back to you guys in a sec. Alright, let's go ahead and start with the line roller first. I'm going to replace the bearing on this one, so I'm going to add a little bit of oil to it. Let that kind of soak in. And I'll add a little bit of grease around here and around that post. And the reason being is because I'm not looking for anything to get frozen in there, and this just helps. It's not the absolute, but helps a lot more than just putting oil on it. Then we'll take that bearing, stick that on there like that. You can even add some grease around the bearing to help protect that also. I'm going to take the bushing, stick that over it, just like that. I'm not going to grease this, but you can also grease the inside here. Just remember that thicker or wider section will be going facing the bail wire. So looking like that. Take our little ring here and put that over it. That fits over a slot that's on the bushing. And now for this piece, we can add some grease to it also. Just putting a light amount on these things. Stick that on like that. And I'm going to add a little bit of grease to the screw, to the line roller screw, just like that. Now at this point we can take this, there's a little slot inside there, if you can see that. That's going to fit over the two prongs that are on the post. Take and just rotate until you fall in place, right there. And then screw it in. And I'm going to go pretty close to all the way down on this one. When I get close to the bottom, what I am going to do is make sure that it's still in that little groove that it should be in. And I'm going to go, like I said, all the way down and then back it up gently. So a little bit of play in there. Now we can go ahead and grease a couple things here. Just around there like that. Inside there. Same thing for this side. Take a little grease, stick it inside the hole as well. And now, before I forget that, I'm going to take a little bit of grease, stick it inside that hole where the click button spring is going to go. A little bit around the post. Some along that channel right there where the trip arm is going to ride. Kind of the same thing on this side. Just around the post right here. Now I'm going to take my click spring, drop that in. Looking like so. Add a little bit of grease to the top of the click spring. That helps keep the click pin in as I work with the reel. Secure it so it's kind of dropped in there and grabbing a lot of that grease. And now it doesn't really fall out. Okay, so now I'm going to stick the trip arm in. Light amount of grease on it. That long side will be facing down. Make sure it's flat and push it all the way to the top up there. Now we're going to drop this in, and the way that's going to look is that little curve, there's a little curved bottom right there. That's going to fit under that post right there. So we're just going to stick it in and just drop it down in place. Just like that. Now for the spring, you'll see there's a smaller opening. The smaller opening is going to receive this piece right here. This is the only piece I'm going to grease. Just kind of around there. Then just drop that in like so. We can take that, lay it in there, make sure this click or the bail spring assembly is under the trip arm assembly. Now I'm going to go ahead and cover this up. I snugged it all the way. I think it should be fine. If not, we'll loosen it up a little bit when we're putting this together. Now we'll take our bail arm, put a little grease right there. That little hole right there will fit over the point for the bail spring. So looking like that. And I'm kind of at an angle, push down and rock as I do it. Once you get set up, you'll feel it in place. And now I'm going to take this, drop that over it, and secure with the long screw. Make sure it works, which we can feel. As an added bonus, we can add some oil right there. Help that work in there. Keep everything kind of loose. Then for the other side, we're just going to drop it on and secure it. Also adding a little oil around it. Then make sure it works. Now let's go ahead and tighten down the line roller screw, and we're done with it. We can add some grease inside this hole right here where that pinion gear is going to go through. A little bit around the base. For the handle, we're just going to add a light amount of oil right here. Some right there. Work that in. Work that in. And then stick some grease just around it. We'll also add some oil, some grease around right here. Just kind of get that protected against locking up inside the gear. And you can stick some on the tip. Okay, for the reel, we're going to start down here. I'm going to open this rub guard up. Removing that screw right there. And sometimes it comes out like this, but you might have to move this lever over to pull that rub guard out. Now we can undo those 3 screws at the top here if we wanted to. Or we can start in the body. Either one works. I'm just having it start up here. Now we do see that the rotor brake is missing from here as well. We're not going to replace that. We just don't need it. We have 2 screws on this side, 1 screw on this side. That's the oil screw. We're not going to remove that. Might open it up just to make sure it opens, but nothing to really do there. When I remove these screws, I'm going to check to make sure that they're all the same length. So I'm going to lay them out as I do this. And then this one we have at the bottom. This one will be or should be shorter. You'll find something under there. I'll show you what that is. It's just like a little plate. It only goes on one way. It looks funky when you take it off, but it's not that big of a deal. It just supports that little post right there that the oscillation gear rides on, or the mechanism. Now we can pull this up. That comes out. Pull this off. We'll do that in a sec. You have a washer on top of the 2 washers. And now what we're going to do is just kind of rock this, lift it up. That was pretty easy. Let's push this down a little bit. That post or that thing that rides on right here is coming out, of course. I don't know if I said this, but notice that the small one or the lower one is shorter than the other 2 in the top. You can set the other side. Now we're going to have a screw here that we're going to undo to get this block off, or the shaft and the block separated. At this point you want to kind of start keeping screws separate. I know where a lot of these go, so I don't really mind me mixing them up, but you may want to just keep them separate. Pull that straight out like this, then you have the block, looks like that. Then you have the gear, might be stuck, which is not good. That bushing was stuck in there. And let's see if we can get this gear off so you can see what it looks like. It may or may not come off. Usually what happens is these gears, they tend to swell slightly, and when that happens, the gear, the bearing stays stuck on there. You can work it down to get it off. I may just leave it alone if the gear is good. I'm sorry, the bearing is good, which it feels like it is, and I would hate the damage of taking it off. This part, the lever, I do not like removing it, so I'm not going to remove it. And I'm sorry if you guys want to see that. I just kind of hate it. It's one of those things. Under this crosswind gear, you saw that we had this transfer gear right there. That's what I call it. I'm not sure if that's a name or not. That sits right here. And that's it. We're going to get this cleaned up. I will not be using anything besides what I told you before. I will be using paper towel, which I've been using the entire time. So I'll see you guys after this stuff is cleaned up. Pull this off so you can see it. I always test the bearings to make sure they're fine. The way I do that is just kind of put them, just tweezers in them or something like that, or use this bearing puller. Just kind of feel how they feel, and then also listen to the sound. If they feel like a little crunchy, they're probably going bad. You can still probably use them, but understand that they might go bad at some point, like any other bearing would. All right, I'll see you guys in a bit. All right, so I was able to get the bearing off of this drive gear. So what I'll show you, what I do is I just take like a fine grain sandpaper. This is like a 1200 grit, I think, 1000 grit, somewhere in that area. Maybe 180 or 1800, I don't know. Don't know what it is, but it's very fine. Let's just take that, and I'm doing it over this, and just rub it along it to kind of shine that up a little bit. It reduces the top layer so that I can fit over it even better. I'm going to finish this up over the garbage so I don't get any findings on here. And whenever you do this, the main thing you're trying to get ground down slightly is always going to be the top part, because the top part is usually what flays open a little bit and makes it difficult to get the bearing off. I've done it. We're going to test it, make sure it works. Works nicely. That's good. Now let me clean the middle of it out. And we're good. Now the first thing we're going to do is do the pinion stack. I'm going to grease the pinion gear, light amount of grease, but I'm going to grease the entire surface area of it. Including those threads at the top. Lay that down. Take our bearing, oil that. And I may do this more than once. So I'm going to take it and work that oil in there. And then put a little more coat on top of it. And I did go ahead and clean the anti-reverse clutch just by taking a Q-tip and kind of running it around inside both directions. So now I'm going to grease inside that wall right there. A little bit around the top, like so. I did open that up and put some grease on the threads just to make sure it doesn't lock up on us. You can put some grease around here, some around here on top, under there, along that ridge right there, a little bit inside this part where that post right there is going to go into. There's a little hole at the top, some inside that hole right there. And I think that's probably about it. So I'll take our gear, put it over it like that, kind of work it in again, and now we're just going to stick it inside like so. Before I forget, let me go ahead and oil right there around that post or that lever. Then kind of work that in. Mind you, I'm going to keep it in this direction for now at least. If I need to move it, I will move it. But remember, having this rub guard go on was difficult in some positions. I did forget to go ahead and grease inside here. You don't necessarily have to do it on this side because there's a bushing that goes there, but getting in the habit of doing it is always good. And I will put this in because I have a tendency to forget some of these things, and I don't want to open it back up or take a lot of things out to put it back in. Notice on there's two little tabs. Those two little tabs will go in two little receiving slots that you see down there. What I do is this, kind of line up as close to the tabs I see in there as possible. Then gently as I push down, rotate until it drops in place. Now remove that. Push this down again to make sure it's flush, which it is. So now we're going to go with this. I do not put the inner race in yet. I line that little gap right there up with this section right here. Notice there's also two little tabs on the bottom. They go in these holes right here. So it's looking kind of like this. And now I'm looking at this lever to see if it's going to fit. It's not, so I'm going to move that over to where it just drops in place, looking like that. Now when you're putting these screws in to secure the anti-reverse clutch, you want to make sure you're following the existing threads. So what happens is, if you're going in and it's too tight, you're cross-threading it, and you don't want to do that. If it goes in fairly easily, which these are, then they're going in the right slot. Now we can take this, stick it in. It's keyed, so you got to rotate until it falls in place. Let it drop down. Rotate as you push that inner race down. It'll fall all the way in place, and now set. At this point, we're going to take our transfer, crosswind, and block and grease those up. Light amount of grease on these as well, but in general a tad bit more than I would for some other reels. The reason is because this has a little bit of wear on it, and I want to help mitigate an inundation by salt water. For the block, it's just kind of the same thing. Want to make sure you get all the entire surface area of it greased up. I think while we're here, we'll go ahead and grease the drive gear as well, just so we can kind of get that out of the way. Now I want to stick some grease inside this hole right here where the handle is going to go through, because I want to help protect that from getting frozen in there, even though I put some on the handle shaft as well. I think we need to do this also, because we're going to be placing this in. I'm going to grease just around here where it's going to go inside the block. I'm also trying to get some grease inside that hole where the screw is going to go. I think that's all we're going to do. I'm going to leave these off for now. They go on top of the pinion gear. But now I'm going to put in these pieces. This transfer gear I'm going to put in with that little recessed area facing down. Make sure it goes all the way down. Then we take our oscillation gear, stick that down there like that. And we're going to have that kind of facing in that general area right there. Now I'm going to add a light amount of grease on this, just a real light amount. Notice that there's a recessed area at the top here on one side of it. That recessed area will be going up into the housing. And now I'm going to stick this on there, looking just like that. Take our main gear or our drive gear, drop that in place, just kind of rotate until it falls in place. Don't move things too much. Take our shaft, stick that through, flat side facing up. Now we just got to position it to where it fits in it. And if one side doesn't work, try the other side. Pushing it all the way through until you find a hole for the screw, which we just did. And I'm going to lightly secure this. The reason being is because I still need to stick that shaft through, and I don't want to get this in a position where it's not going to go through to support the block. So now while we're here, we're going to go ahead and line that up, push it through. That needs to be flush. It's not flush yet, so we're going to take our tweezers. As we push down on this, Try to find that hole up in here. Oh, there it is. Push that up. Everything's secure. Don't touch that right now. Here's the new ramp for the trip. And I was saying to you guys earlier that you don't need a rotor brake around here because it functions fine without it. What the rotor brake does is it kind of slows the rotor down when you're doing a cast so it doesn't snap over. But these are so tight, the tolerances are so tight that they don't necessarily flip over anyhow. When they get to that position where they would flip over, they just kind of stop. As I told you before, I have a tendency to forget some things and I apologize. What I need to put here is the ramp first. And the reason I realized I needed to put the ramp was because I was talking about the rotor brake. So I'm popping this off, leaving everything else intact. Taking our ramp. There's a little slot on the bottom there. That's one of those slots will fit over that little tab right there. And the rest will go on over the screw that's inside, or screw hole right there. Just trying to line it up. Right there is where it feels like it should be. And just push down. And now we'll secure with the screw. And now that's in place. Let's get this back on really quickly. Now we're going to take our left side bearing, oil that up. Same kind of process as the pinion bearing. Take our shims on there. Go to this side, add a light amount of grease inside that channel right there. That's where the bearing sits. Stick our bearing on. Then we're going to drop it over it. Make sure this ramp fits under the top side of this, which it should. Just like that. Now at this point I'm going to squeeze it down and just kind of feel how this feels. And in general, it feels good. So now I'm going to add a little bit of grease to this ramp. Kind of like that. And then I'm going to secure these screws to it. And then worry about that plate on the bottom. Actually, I'll do the plate on the bottom first, just so we see how everything goes. Now we're going to take this brace piece at the bottom right there. It's a little piece of sticking out. That's going to cover that piece. So this will be looking kind of like this. If you guys can see that, that's how it should look. I will take this screw, stick it in. On the back side I'm going to add a little bit of oil so it runs down the threads on this screw here. Then lock it down and put the other two in. Now we can take our washers, stick those over the pinion gear, take our rotor, play with it until it falls in place, and we're going to lock it down. Line this up to where you have one of the flat sides facing the one of those holes for the screw, for the set screw, and then lock that in place. Now at this point I'm going to stick this on. Remember I said that you have to put this in a certain position to get this plate on here. It's that position. Just kind of hit it. There's a little tab at the top that needs to go inside of a hole. Once it's in place, you can screw it in. Don't cross thread this one either. So find the easiest point of entry, then use that. Now we can take our handle, stick that through. It's squared off or keyed, so you got to make sure you find a slot for it. At this point, I actually prefer taking this and just sticking it on myself. You notice that there's some tabs around the circumference here on the inside area. You want to fit those down inside those channels that are in the little dips right there. Hope that makes sense to you guys. When you see it, I think it'll make more sense. All right, that's down in there. And now I can add some grease to this also just to help protect it. So looking like that. And then screwing it in. Hold on to the side while you're doing it. Snug that down. just by hand. Now we can stick our click plate on there, or click gear. That just drops down. Then put our spacer washers on there. And let's test this reel out. Alright, that's that. Let's test the drag first. We know the line roller works because we've tested that already. Or I have. I think I'll do it in front of you. That feels good. The line roller works well. Crank feels good. Let's see the bail trip. And that works well as well. Alright, anti-reverse worked good as well, as we can see. That lever works good as well. Back and forth. Thanks for watching, guys. If you found the video useful, please hit that thumbs up button. If you appreciate content like this, consider subscribing to the channel. And of course, spread the word, share it, do all that good stuff to help it get out there. See you guys next time.